Welcome to the next room. Yeah. Welcome to the next room. From the field on my way to the next room. Welcome to the next room.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest. I've known this young lady for so many years now. She covered me when I was playing professional football. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, she has her everything she's been able to do. I mean, she's been so successful in everything she touched.
Oh my gosh.
Lindsay Czarniak. Lindsay, oh my gosh. I know you can't hear the crowd going wild, but they're there. They're clapping.
Can I get you to record that and like,
Oh
can I
my
play that for people? That's so
gosh.
nice. You're so kind. It's great to
Listen,
see you. It's always
no,
good to see you.
I know. So good to
catch
see
up.
you as well. Lizzie, look, you've covered some of the biggest moments in sports. Was there ever a moment when you just sat back and said, I made it?
Oh my God. That's such a crazy question. It's a good question. Do you know what? I think the closest I've ever come to like feeling a moment where I'm like, this feels different, or this feels like something that maybe it just is like a significant moment was I have loved like every different job I've had, honestly, because they all have different things. But when I was at ESPN and they called me in and asked me if I wanted to take over for Brett Musburger and host the Indy 500 pre-race, I was like, that felt different because I was like, whoa, like that he was such a legend at what he did. And I knew at that moment, because they were saying it's like, okay, it's the first time that a female has done that. I just remember being like, whoa, this is really an awesome opportunity that I did not see coming, that all of a sudden was sort of something that was a bigger thing on a national stage. So it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, I've made it. But I just remember being like, okay, like this is just like take stock in how this moment feels, because this is a really, really cool thing that, and it was funny because I had never covered IndyCar. I had covered NASCAR. I got into sports because motorsports was a big part of that. And in the beginning, I really did not know much. And I had to really learn from the ground up. And that was such an awesome experience because it will like humble you like none other. But anyway, I would say that was probably the first time that I was like, okay, wow, this is amazing. But besides that, I think like the moments that are the most, that give me the chills the most in sports, they're moments where you are lucky enough to be there in person while you're realizing that someone is realizing a dream. Like I've kind of realized that about myself over the past couple years, and especially just coming off the heels of the Olympics. Like there's nothing in sports. I get chills thinking about it now. Like covering when someone is about to see like something that they've always dreamt of actually happen. And like when I remember the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, I was there. I thought I was going to vomit because I was just like, oh my God, like I knew all the guys on that team. It's like, their stories, how much it means to each guy individually. It's like the same thing when you won the Super Bowl, like when you're covering a team and you see the people that are part of that and their stories, you can't help but also be really, really moved just because you know what went into it. And you know it closer than other people because you've like sort of to some extent lived it with them just covering that team. That was such a long answer to your short question. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. As much as as much. It's whatever you give, we'll take it. Did you grow up and like, were you an athlete?
I mean, I played soccer. I played SYA soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, but I didn't play in college. I enjoyed sports. Absolutely. It was always part of like my thing. That was my extracurricular was sports and mostly soccer, but like I was not a star soccer player. But I loved it. But so I started in news, and my first gig was I was a news reporter in Jacksonville. My very first job was I was behind the scenes at CNN because I knew I really wanted to be on MTV, but that wasn't happening. And I just was like, okay, I need to get around somewhere where I just can see and absorb this like TV thing because I know that lights me up. And after when I was at CNN for a couple of years, I was like, okay, I've got to put a tape together if I'm going to really try this on air thing, because I hadn't taken the path that was like going to a small market first. So I sort of needed to step back and do that. And my first job was in Jacksonville, Florida as a news reporter. And then my like transition into sports was just like this wild random thing that that I really never saw coming. So I feel so lucky because I love covering sports so much, and it's like I did not intentionally set out on that path for myself. So I'm just grateful that it's found me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And was there ever a moment where you thought to yourself, like, I don't really
Hell yeah. I mean, still, like, yeah, I mean, like, it's funny because you know how you told me your story about like you played basketball and then you ended up finding football because you were, and your world sort of transitioned in that way. I, so I was in Florida doing news. I had a weekend off and one of my college roommates came down to visit me. She was living in another city and we were like, all right, let's just go to Daytona for a minute. And we went and we were eating dinner at this restaurant and we like struck up a conversation with a group of people at the table next to us. Turns out they worked for Speed Channel, which covered motorsports. And so that was it. It was like conversation, you're hanging out, meeting people. Well, a few months later, Dale Earnhardt Sr. had died. And they were having a tribute concert at the Speedway. And I worked in Jacksonville as a news reporter. And the people from Speed Channel knew that. And they called. And it was, I mean, so random. This producer, Pete Richardson, who's amazing. Pete was like, "Hey, we would love for you to be a reporter in the field and basically be working with us." And I was like, "I don't cover motorsports," but they're like, "This is about Dale, the person. We need more of like a news reporter presence to do this and talk to the people about what he meant to the sport." So my station let me go do it. And then Speed Channel came back and was like, "Hey, we have this opening for a pit reporter. And, we would love for you to do it. It's the ARCA series, which is really entry level auto sports, like sort of in the circuit to NASCAR, right?" And that was like, I don't know, like that to me, that's like a different language. And they were like, "Don't worry, like we will get you caught up on everything. And if your station will let you go for 13 weekends, we would love to have you." And so I was off on weekends. So my station's like, "Go do it." Anyway, to answer your question, the first time I walked into that garage covering that, like covering ARCA, I remember just being like, "What am I doing? Like, this is crazy. I don't even know what a chassis is." Like, so it was like, not only I just felt completely intimidated, but that
Right.
was like one of the first lessons. Like they were so great.
Mm, mm. And what's something viewers think they know about sports media that's maybe completely wrong?
I mean, well, like a question I get all the time is like, especially if you're working somewhere like Sports Center, at ESPN or, is like, how can you be an expert in so many things? And the truth, like no one can. So I think maybe something people don't realize is just the value of the research department and the value of all the different positions I think that it takes to like whatever it is, if it's a live broadcast, it takes all these different people to put it on from like, the director, the producers, the runners, everyone, like to the researchers. I don't think people realize the amount of
Mm,
like people that you have at your disposal to help you do your job that you really have to use wisely. Right. Like I would think it's probably similar to like a football team, right? For you to have your maximum performance, you've got to rely on all these different things. And it's like how you treat people matters, how you delegate matters. So that I think that's a big thing. But also, I do think like all through the arc of my career and people I talk to say this, like no one really feels fully confident. Oh God, sorry, that's my phone. But yeah, I feel like people always feel like, do I belong? Am I good enough to be here? I think that's a common thing too that often seeps into your mind.
yeah, yeah, no, no, I totally get that. And being that you're a woman, like, how hard was it to break into sports media in your early days? When you first started this, was it hard, being a woman?
I mean, I think yes. On one hand, it's sort of like in the days when I started covering sports, I was doing that motorsports gig. So my station was letting me go for those 13 weekends. And that was really a place where I was the only woman, oftentimes like at the racetrack. And so on one hand, that can also be helpful in certain extent, like experiences. But I found I feel like you always just have this awareness that you have to at least at that point, it was like, you have to work harder. You have to be on your P's and Q's. You've got to know your shit. Like, you've got it because it's just
Mm,
it still was a thing. And I think obviously women have come so far now, but it's like,
mm,
there are still ways that I think women can continue to grow and advance, and that I want to see women like doing more in sports. But yeah, I mean, it was hard in the way that it's just like you have to navigate stuff. Like, there's the navigating. Okay, like I'm in my 20s, and at that point it was like, this is a couple decades ago. So like, women in the locker room, it was obviously very commonplace, but it still
mm,
was like, that was a thing. You have to learn navigating and everything that goes with that. And just, I don't know, it's tricky. It's like it's like an onion. There are so many things to talk about with that, because it is, yeah, there are times that I've felt like, really, okay, I've got to just own it and act like I'm really confident in this moment,
mm.
maybe. But I think more than anything, it's like, just confidence like goes such a long way. And I think that, yes, there are times where it's like, being a woman has been like, okay, you've just, the biggest thing is like just making sure that I thought mistakes were like graded harsher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And is there something that you learned early on in your younger days that you still take with you today?
Oh my God. I think, well, yeah, like something that keeps coming up is like the people, like you and I talked, and you were talking about being a master of who is around you, right? Like, who's in your circle. I think that something that early on was very evident was like, I needed people to help me, because I needed to know what I didn't know in the sports world as a journalist, because I'm coming from this news background where I'm on all these news stories, and now it's like the inner workings of everything. Okay, so how are we covering this team? What are everything, like, from the process of it, from open locker room to practice schedules to like, when someone has media availability, like, there are all these parts that come with covering sports that are different from news, because you're sort of following this team schedule, which is really interesting, and then there's also an etiquette. And I don't mean locker room. I mean, like, there's an etiquette to when a player is going from, coming off the field to he's got to go where whatever work he's going to have done. And it's like, you're not bothering them at that point. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's the intricacies that go into just the chops it takes to be in that environment and cover a team or a sport, what have you. So I feel like learning that was key, but also just the fact that, like, so much of this whole thing is about the relationships that you make and the genuine, how genuine you are. And I think
Huh.
something that keeps coming back to me now is like, people genuinely caring about the people that you're working with, and like really wanting to know not just their names, but also like know a little bit about them. Like, I think that at the end of the day, like, that's so key in any kind of relationship. And in sports, something that I love so much about the journalism side of it is like, it is a lot about the organic relationships that you have. And oftentimes that's what comes into play with stories, or like old school real journalism where people are breaking news, and that feels a little bit different, because now so much is the social media, and we constantly everything like at our fingertips. But I think, at the end of the day, it's still people are sharing information or comfortable, giving you information because of those organic relationships. I don't know. Like, and I would love to hear your side of it too, because I'm sure from a player's perspective, you have a totally different, outlook.
No, 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 no. Look, one thing you said that really hit me, you said relationships is about cultivating relationships, the organic relationships. And I learned that, not just as a player, but like outside after the game of football, post career, like
Yeah.
all about those relationships that you develop that can, be the difference from you getting a job or not. A lot of people's always ask me, how do you do a lot of auditions and things of that nature? And I say it's about meeting people. It's about the relationships that you harness, and that's been important even from playing. Like, it was all about relationships, cultivating. A lot of people talk about, the just about going out on the football field and practicing together and things of that nature. But what about the stuff that you do outside of that? Like
Mhm.
the birthday parties that one of my teammates may have that my family and I go to, right? That's those are the biggest moments right there. That's where you create the real relationships, you know? So
And
that's
it's
very,
like
very important.
so it's like showing up for each other, but like really just like showing up, like being there. Like,
Mhm.
do you?
Yeah.
Okay, so this might sound weird, but like, can you explain how does that play out on the field? Like, why does that matter on the football field?
Mhm. I
Because I
think
know you're right, but I would love to just hear you explain that.
yeah, I mean, it's like if you're not on the same page, if you're not connected, um, then how can you have that accountability that the next man is looking for, right?
Mhm.
If Peyton Manning and I are, have a great relationship, we're going to dinners and we're talking and we're strategizing, we're talking about different things outside of the field, right? We're getting to know each other. And now when there's an error on the field, I know how to go to him. I know how to connect with him. Sometimes a lot of times like on the football field, you see two people arguing and it's looking like they just met each other or they have no camaraderie, like they haven't built anything. You can tell, you can see it. If they have a connection, that means they did the work outside of the field. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
if you go into like a courtroom and you see the attorney asking the young lady a question, but she don't understand what he's saying. That's because they haven't done the work. You know what I mean? So that goes for anything that we do in life. You have to build that organic connection before you start anything. And that's just the way it is. And it makes a world of a difference. Makes a
That's
world of a difference.
it's
And, I,
interesting.
and let me give you an example real quick.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
when I was in Denver, it was imperative that we get together as a team and watch football games on Mondays and Thursdays. Right,
Oh,
Thursday night
wow.
was the big night for offense. I know for sure, and we would invite some of the guys like Demarcus Ware, some of the defensive guys, and they would come, have dinner with us.
Yeah.
Well, so that was something that Peyton Manning took serious. He was very serious about that.
Where was it? Was it in his house or somewhere else?
Steakhouse right there, where we near the facility.
Love that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had heard also I remember when I was at ESPN, there was, we were trying to track this down because there was, some story I had read about how he would give teammates of his a list of movies from the '80s that
Mhm.
he loved, that he wanted them to have watched. That was before, that time. He was with the Colts at that point, but I don't know, I always thought that was interesting, but yeah, what's funny to me is about what you, highlighted about that on the field and, like, knowing how to go to that player is like ultimately it's kind of like what you're saying is it's those personal connections are what help us connect in times of I don't want to say failure but
Mhm.
adversity, right? Like that's really interesting that when it's between two people it's like that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, you know how to communicate. And for you,
Yeah.
was there ever, like I ask this question all the time, like, what's the biggest rejection that helped your career?
It's such a good question. um oh gosh, so I'm going back and I'm like, okay, I remember the time that when I was early in my career, I would look up names of news directors in cities that I thought would be great to work in, and I would set up meetings for myself. So I remember I did that in Wilmington, North Carolina, probably because I liked Dawson's Creek, but I was like, okay, Wilmington, and I tracked down these like three, it was the classic like ABC, NBC, CBS, whatever affiliates, and these men, because at the time they were men, news directors, they were really kind and agreed to give me like 10 minutes their time, right? So anyway, the reason I'm telling you this story is I went into this one news director's office and he was like, I don't have a job, but we have a lot of sister stations that are always looking for people, da da da, whatever. So anyway, long story short, I get a call from Toledo, Ohio, which I hadn't even talked to anyone in Ohio. They were like, we want to fly you in for an interview and we're looking for a reporter, da da da, whatever the time frame was. So I go in, and I feel like the whole thing went really well. And then they asked me. I know this is not the direction you thought this was going because now I'm talking about local news. But they asked me something like to critique a part of their newscast,
Mhm.
and at that time, I didn't have pets, and I remember being like, you know. I don't know. I feel like you guys spend a lot of time at the end on the pets and you could and like I don't know if you know this, but like I mean, in local news and especially now that I have a dog and a bird, I'm like I love pet stories. But I didn't know what else to critique, so I critiqued their pet stories and I that totally like knocked me out of the running. So I did not get that job. That I remember I was like, what happened? That was a thing. So that sort of set my trajectory because that sent me to Jacksonville after that happened, and that's kind of what started my whole career initially. But in terms of sports, like, there were certain like, along the way, there have been jobs that I would say like, "Oh my god, I would give anything to do that." I love live event coverage, like, I just love it. There's nothing like it from my perspective, like, when you can cover an event that's about to happen and the stakes couldn't be higher and you're doing pregame, I love that. So, like, there was a job that I did not get that was in that ilk, and I was just like, the good thing I can take out of this is I now understand what I would, like, pay money to do myself. Do you know what I mean? And I was
Mhm.
like, at least now I know because of how badly I realized I wanted that, that was it. So I think, in every rejection, and believe me, like there have been tons of rejections, there's also rejection when you work at a place and you're trying to do a specific task or get chosen to be the person to do XYZ at that place. And I don't know about you or if it is the same way as a player, but I really struggle when I don't get a why. And what I've learned is like oftentimes, especially now, especially when you're talking about doing stuff on a national stage, you're not going to get a why. Like you're just sometimes not going to get picked. And I have found that like just because of the way my brain works, I do a lot better if someone can say, "Hey, we didn't pick you this time. Here's why." But it's just that's not how life is. So I have had
Yeah.
to realize that, you know what? Things will happen as they should. You can't take it personally, and you
Mhm.
just gotta keep moving on, you know?
That's that's right. That's right. And this is something I know in everything that we do in every field, every career, there's always something going on behind the scenes. What's something that
Ugh.
people would never expect?
Yeah, well, and do you mean, like, give me an example, and I'll totally
Like it could be anything like for example, um a lot of people when I was playing football, like people see us on TV, they see us running up and down the field,
Mhm.
right? But they don't see like we talked about like us having dinner
Yeah.
outside things, but they don't see the fights that we have. They don't see the fights. Like they don't see that stuff. There was a moment in San Francisco where the offensive linemen were taken up for Colin Kaepernick. People don't see that. But the wide receivers, we were calling them out, but then they stood up and it was this whole big thing where everybody's about to fight. Like they don't see that kind of stuff. Like something
Wow.
like that. Give me some of the tea that can you spill some of that tea?
Spill some of the tea.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are times that and maybe this is kind of similar to like what starts those experiences that you're talking about is like where you feel like, it takes a lot to put on a broadcast and everyone's role is really important, equally important. It doesn't matter because like the person who's anchoring, hosting, whatever, you're not doing what you're doing if you don't have the other information that people are providing or some of the writing or whatever it is, the video. Um, so I feel like sometimes, there can be disagreements with that. There can be disagreements about how you're approaching an interview or a certain segment. And that can be, okay, you've got to figure out how really in those instances, I've been like, okay, this is a lesson in like how to communicate 101 because, like they always call this communication, but it's like communications is what I mean, the field, but like the art of communicating is not easy. And so it's what you're talking about on a football field when you're, in a moment and it's like, how are you communicating? How are you processing that information fast enough to be like, okay, we're moving forward together. Here's how we put that behind us, or here's how we can like make the most of what we've just done to get even farther down the field. There's that, I'm trying to think because I know that, there are a lot of moments of tea, of course, like being spilled. Like there is look, like my time at ESPN was amazing and I loved it. That when I got there, I had only ever been the one woman in a sports department.
Mhm.
Like any job I had had along the way, which had been like 3 up to that point when I was hopping. Cause that's the other thing that I feel like people don't realize is if when I was coming up in the field of sports television, it's kind of like the traditional path was you're hopping from market to market. The regional sports networks were there, but they weren't what they are now yet. So it was like the traditional path was that. So I got really used to like hopping every 2 years. And I was like, and at some point that becomes a measuring stick for how good you are and like what your worth is, because you're like, okay, got to keep it moving, got to be going. You know what I mean? Like it was this weird thing. But it's relevant because you're moving up in market size. And if you have dreams of being at an ESPN or somewhere like that, that's kind of what that was the drill. So I had only been like the woman that was in the sports department, because at that point it was like there was one woman, maybe two guys, and you're like part of this sports team. And everywhere I was, like Miami, DC, it was like so much fun. And it was such a great team to be a part of. And I got used to that role because it's sort of like, everyone kind of settles in, and I just feel like I kind of got used to it. And it's why I call my husband Melvin. Like I cannot call him his first name because I'm so superstitious about it. And it feels weird. Like we met at our station and I only ever called him Melvin because I was just used to calling every person I worked with in my sports department by their last name. So at Sports Center, when I got there at ESPN, it's kind of like, oh, wow. Then for the first time, there are all these amazing women that I'm working with. But I remember it, it was sort of like, I realized quickly the value of like leaning on women and how important that was. Because if you're not careful, it can be like, okay, wait, this is competition. And that's really scary. So I don't know. I feel like there are moments like that where it just, maybe realizing like, oh, maybe that person is not really looking out for my best interest. And is that really happening? Okay, what do I do? Right? Like, yes, there were some of those moments that I'm like, what is going on? But above all, I feel like you kind of learn how to navigate all the things. And I don't know. Some of the best moments are just when you're in different sporting environments and you're like covering stuff and just some of the stuff you see there. Like, I love motorsports, and it's just one of the best, like, no matter which motorsport it is, the family atmosphere and the nature of those sports is so unique because they're traveling together week to week. And, there are a lot of great stories that come out of those types of events too.
No, it's all, and you speak about covering stuff, right?
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment when you were live and everything just went wrong? How do you recover from that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first time I ever did a live shot, I remember literally when the light went on. I was at a Christmas tree farm, and it feels so different when they actually are like, okay, 3, 2, 1, and you're live for the first time. I was like, I just couldn't talk. I was like, and it took me a bit to get my bearings and do that. So that was like embarrassing, but that was okay because it was my first time. Yes, I have had times where, I think like everyone I'm sure has them, but it's like they're not that common, but like times where for whatever reason you get off your game or like something rattles you. And I think it's why like the best of the best, you're like, okay, the ability to recover quickly and just move on is so important. And like I remember there was a time where we were covering Alabama coming home from the national championship, and we're on the road, and that was with Sports Center, and it was great, but like there was something happened, like we weren't getting comms to the truck, and it's sort of like in that moment you're feeling kind of naked, and like you don't know exactly where you're supposed to be going, because for whatever reason I think we weren't seeing what was going out in the monitors, which is just part of TV. It just happened. So I think in those moments, like, oh, I'll tell you the most embarrassing one. I was on set in Washington, D.C., and we were covering the Washington Capitals. And I was in the middle of my lead, and I was like feeling it and having fun. And it's the part where I'm on camera and I go, yes. And so the Washington Craps, and I called them Craps. And I was like, I don't know how the hell my mouth did that. And like why, instead of saying caps, I said craps. But it was like, it was out and I couldn't put it back in. And it was like all of a sudden on YouTube. And I'm like, what are you going to do? Like what? And all you can do in those moments is just be like, that's the magic of television. That's what my boss, George Michael, used to say. If there was something that we messed up, he would be like, and what you say is, ladies and gentlemen, that's just the magic of television. So like, that's kind of always stuck in my head. He also told me, and he would give me these little like gems of insight. But early on, in one of the times we were talking back by his office, he was like, Czarniak, if you say something, then after this, you should say, what do I know? I'm just a girl. And I often, sometimes I'll think back to that because I'm like, that was such an interesting thing for him to suggest. But he kind of had an awareness of, I think, where people in that town
Mm.
were. And when he was introducing me on the scene there, it was very interesting the strategy and the help that he gave to help intro me to like some of the key people in that town that like truly that was the best working experience of my life. Like he really, it was like boot camp. But there were so many lessons I take from that time.
Wow. Wow, that's all, and that's around George Michael time. That's when you first started, right? That's when your career. That's when you.
So when I was in news in Jacksonville, I got that sports job
Mhm,
with the racing, and then that turned into a sports job at a TV station in Miami. So
mhm,
I went Jacksonville, Miami, where I started doing sports, then to DC. So
mhm.
yes, DC was, I would say, where it was like, okay, this is the first really full-time big sports anchor job and reporting job that you're doing. Yeah.
Oh, wow, wow, that's amazing. And with
Yeah.
your life, you have 2 kids, Lindsay, right? Correct?
Yes, they're 12 and 9. Yep.
Your life is nonstop sports. How do you protect your personal life?
Oh, that's a great question. And if you have any pointers, I'm all for them. No, I mean, like different things. I feel like we make sure as much as we can that we are, eating dinner together as a
Mhm,
family. My husband's job is crazy with his hours. Like, he's more on the morning side of things, but because of that, there are some benefits that to timing where he's around like earlier in the afternoon then. So that's great. So I would say keeping certain things is like drawing a boundary, like, no, that's really important to us. Like, if our kids are invited to do something else, we kind of try to protect that time as a family. Um, and, same goes for like time to just get away and unwind, like whether it's as a couple with Melvin or just, I don't know. I'm trying to be better about just taking some time during the day to be silent and actually I'm really bad at that, but something that I love is, like, I love puzzles, and I have found that, like, if I have a puzzle and I can just go work on it from time to time, that kinda
mhm,
helps me, like, calm down and decompress and just, like, because you can only really focus on that. It's like golf, you know?
mhm,
Um but I think we try to just protect time that we identify that we can have away. My husband would love to like not ever leave the house.
mhm,
And I'm more of I like social, interaction a lot. And so we kind of have to come to a mutual agreement of that when we're like
mhm,
looking at, okay, what do we want our weekends to look like?
mhm.
Not signing him up for too much. However, I have realized sometimes I think he just wants me to go ahead and plan, you know?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that I don't know. It does sound fair at all. I don't
He's waiting for you to plan. He don't wanna have the
maybe.
plans.
Is that true? I don't know. Are you like that?
That is so funny. It's look, balance, Imma tell you, balancing is the toughest thing to me. Like, sometimes I'll have to leave out, I'm always traveling, so if I have to leave, I wanna go by and see my kids. I wanna see my grandmother because they live with their mom, most of
Okay.
right? And they're only, like, 50 minutes away from me, but I wanna see them, but I have to go. So that's the hardest part to me, just being able to allocate that time to just get away, and, with traffic being the way it is, and it's
Yeah.
that's just, like, the toughest part of balancing when it comes
Where
to.
you are, yeah, the traffic is real too. It's
Yeah, what's the hardest part about balancing life and, your family, industry, and all those things?
so, I think it is I mean, I'll tell you honestly, it's like, I find that it's a lot easier to balance that if when you've got a job that's more like a classic 9 to 5, meaning it was easier because now I'm freelance. What I love about that is I love the variety of things that I can do. I love being able to cover the Olympics like that and then go and do the Indy
Mhm,
500, which I will do in May. And like the flexibility it gives to do some like a bunch of different things, but also then you have swaths of time when you're really busy and swaths of time when you do have downtime. What I find tricky about that with the balance is if I don't have like an obvious thing that is structured that I have to physically be accountable for during my day, I like I struggle with that. So I'm constantly trying to find a better balance and a way to manage myself
mhm,
where I am like figuring out what does my structure of the day look like because I get very distracted by things that are like, oh, like I get very excited. So it's like, okay, I can easily lose track of like focus. And I think that's tricky. I also think like, look, with my kids, your kids are a little older than mine, I think, right? Like, but I'm constantly reminded just of like how fleeting this time is and how these ages, it goes so fast. We all know that. Anyone that's a parent, you hear that enough, But I think it's giving myself the grace and the time to be like, it is okay if I, in this moment, am feeling like I just really want to be present to, and I can because I don't have a work obligation to show up and be here like for my kids and see that, And I think to answer your question, it's kind of like the trickiest part is giving myself the um
Mhm.
blessing to make my decision in the moment about what it is. Am I going to really lean in at this moment to being there for my son and my daughter because I really want to? Am I going to feel confident enough to make the decision and then be like, no, mom's going to go do this. I love doing this. This is my job and this is what I want to do. I think sometimes there's an added layer of angst that I think is probably a waste of my energy because I'm allowing myself to feel guilty for both sides of that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, I understand that. I understand. It is a lot. I mean, when you have a lot going on, I mean, people like yourself, there's so much going on and that's the way I feel like that's the way it should be. But we
Yeah.
also have to be, accountable to ourselves and, to just everything that we have going on in life.
I had an Olympian, my friend Angela, who was my analyst, who played on the hockey team that won gold in Nagano. And she's like, I love her mindset because she's just so like straight, like really matter of fact. But she was like, I think part of the problem for a lot of people is that they just can't say what they want. And
Mhm.
like, we don't give ourselves maybe the time to really sit with it and be like, what do I really want? And I
Mhm.
just think that's a really interesting concept too, because it's like just identifying what you want and saying like, and making peace with that. And it
Mhm.
can look a million different ways. So I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And now, that you've gone on, you've gone from there all the way to here to where you are now. You built a lot for yourself. What does success look like now versus earlier in your career?
That is such a good question. I think about this a lot because earlier in my career, I think it was this like unabashed, like rat race to prove that I was good at what I was doing. And I really think when I mentioned about how I was used to like hopping every 2 years, at some point, and this is no one's fault, it just is. It's like I started feeling like, okay, my measuring stick of if I'm doing well or if I'm like a valuable human here is if I'm getting the opportunities, if and I've often thought about this because I'm like, does that mean like I'm a competitive person? Yeah, but not like crazy. But I think what I've realized now is like, God, it has nothing to do with that. But I think that your brain is wired that way intentionally. Like it's
Mhm.
sort of like your frontal lobe is only fully formed at a certain point, and it's like why it is helpful to be naive in certain situations, right? Like earlier in my career, I probably took more risks that I'm like, I am glad that I didn't realize what an idiot I looked like
Mhm.
bringing that up because like you just are so naive and you're in it and that's how it's supposed to be. But I think success then looked a lot different because it would be like, oh, are you getting the opportunity to do this? Are
Mhm.
they asking you to do this? Is it your name on the schedule when it comes out? To be doing this show because that a lot of times is how stuff was in different jobs I had. It's like you find out what your shift is, right? And there's a value that is attached to different shifts or being asked to do the big thing. I think now my value is success. Like certainly there is a big part of it that is, like there is a balance, a reality to the balance that I want to have because I don't want to miss certain things. But I think I measure it probably by what are the opportunities that in the moments, I guess, in those opportunities that you're able to enjoy. I'm not making sense. I don't know. I don't know. I just think, there's still a lot that I would love to do. And there is work that I really value. Like this past Olympics was like just some of the most exciting work that I've done. And I didn't even realize it was going to be that way because the Olympics is always fun, but the time frame that my show was on was like this massive, unexpected blessing of live hockey that was just so exhilarating. And so that was success for me. That was like just fun, giddy success because it was like you're able to be a part of this thing. And I wasn't so worried about how was I perceived? I was like, are we doing good work? Are we a team doing good work? I think that's a difference now is it's like I care much more about the team that I'm a part of.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't care about the team before, but I think I'm almost embarrassed sometimes when I think back about the way that I would have looked at the circumstance because I definitely put too much onus on like,
Mhm.
how am I being perceived? How am I doing?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And Lindsay, I know time is winding down. I have so many questions to ask you, but I know I'm not gonna be able to get to all of them today. You got to pick those babies up. What
That's all
advice
right.
would you give someone trying to break into the space right now?
I would say ask a million questions and find the people, that you look up to that you maybe, and it doesn't have to be the person that you're like, oh my God, I want their job. It could be someone that you just like something about what they do or something you've seen. Because I still use that advice. I think it's like really important if there's someone that you want to learn from. Like you just ask questions. No question is dumb. And I think oftentimes it's like people really appreciate that. And if you're reaching out to try to just pick the brain of someone, and
Mhm.
if they're not getting back to you, follow up. Like just try again. And I think just know like persistence is key. And I think a lot of times, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, like people get busy, you're doing a bunch of things, maybe you're balancing a lot of different things that people don't realize behind the scenes. So sometimes if people drop the ball and don't get back to you, don't take it personal. So I think that's one thing, don't take it personal.
Mhm.
Definitely ask questions and um don't ever think that something is out of reach. And also, I think sometimes people will tell you that something is not a good idea or it's hard. I think if you feel a flicker to try something, it's there for a reason and it's your story and try it because what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out, but at least you were able to say that you tried it. And I don't care how stupid it sounds or how different from what it is you're doing now. I think it's worth it. So
Mm.
that is my deep thoughts with Lindsay.
Powerful. Yeah, that guys, one thing I took away from that is don't take it personal. Not take it personal, please.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
easier said than done, right?
Exactly. Easier said than done. Rapid fire for you real quick before you get
Love
off
it.
here. Ask you a couple questions
Yep.
and you give me your answer. Okay. Anchorman or Talladega Nights?
Oh my god. Oh, this is so hard because those are two of my favorite, ah, Anchorman.
Coffee or energy drink?
Coffee. Coffee. My
College
husband and I,
football?
like, he's addicted to Celsius. I'm coffee all night and day.
I'm gonna go for coffee too. College football or NFL?
NFL.
What would you think? What do you think would be a fun interview? Mike Tyson or Michael Jordan?
I mean, Tyson is gonna probably out of the gate be more fun, but I mean, Jordan because the enigma of landing the interview with Jordan and just getting Jordan to Jordan.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that.
But Tyson's always gonna I don't know. That's a tricky one
That's
for
a tough
different
one.
reasons.
That's a
It
tough.
is. It is.
If you had to choose best female fighter, who are you choosing? Clarissa Shields, Ronda Rousey, or Layla Ali?
Ronda Rousey because she put me in a headlock once on SportsCenter. She actually
Oh,
co-hosted SportsCenter with me, which was so funny. So I've gotta go with my girl Ronda.
that's what's up. That's awesome. See, look at
Yeah.
that.
She was so good. I was so intimidated. She was so
Wow, I
good.
would be too. She was a great fighter.
I know, right?
She was really, yeah, she was intense.
Yeah. And part of it was just the demeanor too.
I wouldn't fight her. I would not fight her. I would not fight her. I would not. But
Ah,
Lindsay, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on to
oh my
Next
God, Vernon,
Next
you're
Row
the
Show. I
best.
appreciate you. You were awesome. Thank you.
Anytime, anytime.
Yeah,
Sorry,
thank
I got a little deep there at one point, but yeah, no, that was so fun. You're the best.
yeah, that was awesome. Good to see you, and I'll see you around.
Yes. See you around soon. All right.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Welcome to the next row.